Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Gold Guts and Live Half Two. My name is Tom Luongo. I hope you all had a great Easter weekend. I know I did. A lot of stuff completed, and then I went out Sunday and family. I hope that you keep our relationships care about them alive, tight, growing, and incredibly important. All right, and opportunities like Easter, regardless of whether you're Christian or next week Orthodox crowd, opportunity holidays like this together to enjoy themselves. Bonds of friendship. Okay, so that being said, this is the Gold Goods and Guns half hour. My name's Longo. I hope you and let's get the other stuff out of the way. So we're going to talk about the Petroyuan this morning. We're going to talk about Trump's offer to meet with Putin and how that has been impacted by quote unquote Skripal poisoning. We're going to talk about a variety of different. Remember that you can always find me over at goldgoatsandguns.com. Find me tonight on Periscope at periscope.tv/Tom Luongo. We'll be talking about any of the same night and other things, whatever comes up. Fan base there. I go on at o'clock on Mondays and Fridays at 9. You can check that out as well. Then you can support my work if you like what I work over at Patreon at /gold. Links to all the relevant stories for today's discussion will be in the description below. So, all right, let's get right to it. So, what's important now is the what's important now is I'm a little worried I'm getting in audio is not is we having a problem with the audio? Certainly hope not. Let's just see if this can. So my keep me updated as well. So I want to talk about the Petroyuan. So I got a note this morning from Radio Sputnik over in Moscow. They want to discuss this very topic with me. So I'll jump on here and give you some what I'm worried about. I want to discuss with them tomorrow. I'll probably discuss in the blog tonight. The Petroyuan started trading last week. I've mentioned it a couple of times, and we what's important about this is not what a lot of people are talking about. I made this point before, and I'll make it again. Everybody in the gold community and the alternative money community is looking at this like it's the greatest thing since life. That's going to change the world. Well, yeah, it might change the world 10 or 15 years from now. Maybe 5 years from now, depending on how much of a spasm in the monetary system. But it's not going to change anything tomorrow. Okay? 99% of the world's oil is still priced in dollars. Less than 1% of it is priced in gold and washing machines and yuan and soybeans and other stuff. For the most part, gold dollars. Petrodollar still exists. It's going to continue to exist. There's still tremendous economic advantages. Why it exists, and that's that. But as I said, make the point. I've made this point before, and I'll make it again for new listeners, followers. What's important about this oil futures contract? Multiple points. First point is that it's medium sour crude. World's benchmarks for oil, the pricing benchmark, both light sweet crude, Brent and WTI, both light sweet crude. West refines a lot of, like gasoline, diesel fuel less, fuel oils less. The rest of the world prefers medium sour crude. That's what their refineries are set up for. That's what the Russians produce. That's what the Saudi Arabians produce. Mostly medium sour crude. So there isn't a direct futures contract for dealing with that. Shanghai futures now does so. So that's a big point. It's going to help adjust pricing friction. It's going to really help. It's going to do what Vladimir Putin has been hoping for and trying to create for years, which is a benchmark or a pseudo benchmark for Russian Urals grade. Currently trades at a discount to Brent. Okay, most of the oil in the world is priced at a discount or premium to Brent. For the most part, it's a discount, simply because there isn't a liquid pricing mechanism for these grades of oil. I mean, I don't know if you know this, but there are many grades of oil out there. WTI, there's Brent, Russian Urals grade, Saudis, Dubai grade, AP Minas, AP Tapis, they're used in Asia, Japanese oil, there's the Malaysian oil, there's all sorts of oil. And they all trade at different discounts and or premiums to Brent. WTI is really, all it does is reference the amount of oil sold in West Texas. That's it. Okay. So what this contract, why this contract is so important is one, that helps the pricing mechanism. Second point is that it is convertible to gold. Let's back up for a second and know why Chinese can back this project with gold, why they can back an oil futures contract to trade billions of dollars a day in gold. Because the Chinese bought the LBMA a few years ago. That would be the London Bullion Market Association. Very important. It gives China access to physical gold from around the globe in order to trade it on the Shanghai Exchange. And that's been in effect now for years. Shanghai Exchange, physical exchange, is an ever growing and important gold trading market around the world. It's done very well. It continues to grow in terms of its importance in the global gold trade, and it provides a check, a balance against the COMEX and the London markets. Okay, so these things are very important, and so that's already been well established in the minds of traders. It's well established in the minds of commodity traders and investors and everybody around the world. Very important foundational thing. Now that that's been built, now the Chinese, with their own massive production of gold, the Chinese, by the way, produce over global production of gold is somewhere around 3,500, 3,600, depending on but it's somewhere in the 3,500 metric ton per year range. The Chinese have access to most of that that's sold on the spot market because they own the LBMA, and the LBMA for a century was the main mechanism by which gold was traded around the world. So this oil futures contract is important because it's one denominated in, right? The Chinese are saying, as the world's largest importer of oil, they now have the power, like we had the power as the world's largest importer of oil in the 70s, to say, we want to buy oil in our currency. They have that power now. As an economist, you always worry about who's producing the marginal unit of supply and who's creating the marginal unit of demand. Well, I think the Russians create the marginal unit of supply of oil, and the Chinese create the marginal unit of demand for oil, and therefore they effectively control the supply and demand, the final price of oil. You'd be wrong about that, but certainly on the supply side, or the demand side, sorry, it's the Chinese. You can argue, we can have a long and healthy discussion about whether it's the Saudis or the United States or Russia as who supplies the marginal barrel of oil. But the Chinese are definitely the price setters at this point. And because they're the price setters, they also have the ability to say what currency they want to set that price in. Or, with all of those things now in place, the foundation has been laid for them to launch this futures contract and have it be successful. The Chinese have been trying to do this for 10 years. The Russians have been trying to launch an oil futures contract and a benchmark futures contract for Urals grade oil for years. The United States puts pressure on oil traders and corporates and governments to say, no, don't do it. Don't trade with these people. Don't do it that way. You stay in the petrodollar system or we'll cut you off. Okay? The political pressure behind the scenes on everybody to maintain the petrodollar system has been in place for over 10 years. I can tell you I spent a long time wondering when the Kish oil bore off the coast of Iran was going to have an effect on the price of oil. Guess what? Never happened. Why? No one would show up because no one was allowed to show up to trade Iranian oil. That's simple. It's the same thing with Russian Urals grade. So now, let's tie this together. So now you have the oil futures contract denominated in yuan. But why is that important? Important, but how does that change anything? It doesn't if in the minds of investors and traders, they can't get their profits out of China. Remember, every investment needs to have an exit strategy. You put money into a place, you have to be able to get it out again. And the Chinese still have a closed capital account. It's hard to move money onshore into China and then get it out again. And through the gold exchange. And so by tying the convertibility of this oil futures contract to gold, which you can export out of, there's now an exit strategy. That creates the opportunity for everybody who's generating profit, trading oil on this exchange in these contracts, to have the hairs on the back of their neck stand down a little bit. They don't have to be as fearful about being able to get their money out of China because they know how they have an exit strategy. So this means that if they want to remain liquid in the market, they can take those yuan that they've earned, they can turn around and they can put them in yuan denominated debt because the money's not going to sit there in cash. They're going to do something with it. They're going to put it in short-term 3-month bills. They're going to put it in 6 months. They're going to invest it like anybody else would. Take your profits here, immediately put them to work for you. So if you can get in and out of yuan denominated investments through the gold market, now you have the opportunity for China to deepen and broaden its government bond market, its corporate bond market, else, and the yuan denominated debt market, what we generally call them the dim sum bond market. Dim sum bond market. That's actually, honestly, that's what we call it in the so the dim sum bond market can now get deeper, which is exactly what the Chinese want, because the Chinese, in order for the yuan to become even a regional reserve currency or a major player in the world's trade, there has to be a way for them to expand the money supply without affecting the exchange rates. That's the beauty of the petrodollar. Okay, beauty of the petrodollar has been always that we buy oil that people trade oil in dollars. They convert those dollars into U.S. Treasuries. The U.S. government then issues more dollars based on the U.S. Treasuries in order to liquefy trade. That's, and they issue dollars when they sell Treasury bonds, and that's how the dollar took over the world. So Chinese are just doing the same thing, and they were able to do that by increasing both the supply and the demand of dollars, or in this case now yuan, organically and not as a pump prime mechanism by the central banks just creating more money out of thin air and trying to goose the credit demand cycle. Much different. This is about organically improving and expanding the role of a particular currency organically and the need for it organically. Why gold isn't money, guys. Gold ain't money. Don't use it to settle trade. Well, we kind of do now with the oil futures contract in Shanghai. Kinda. I really don't think a lot of people are going to convert into gold and then get the money out. They're going to leave their money in China. We're going to allow the Chinese over time to do what I just said. Expand the money supply without affecting the exchange rates. That creates a stable bond market that can grow, because you can't ask people to invest in bonds today at a fixed coupon yield, say 3%, and then trash the currency so that their effective yield is only 2.5%. Can't do that. If you want people to show up to you're not the biggest player at the table, you can't do that. People will just leave you. So, currency exchange rates are very important for bond investors, right? And for bond investors in the individual currency pair. So if you're a Russian trader, you care about the yuan ruble exchange rate. You want to take all this money that you're making doing trade with China, and you're going to buy, Chinese yuan denominated debt. You care about the ruble yuan exchange rate, because if that fluctuates too much, if that drops, well, then your yield drops, and now the investment's no good. Now you need to sell the bonds, and then that starts the downwards. That starts an even worse downward kind of spiral in currencies. And this is how we use this system in order to bankrupt countries. How we induce hyperinflation in marginal economies. We did it by having this hammer, right? So, because all we have to do is raise interest rates, crash the exchange rate, and then everybody leaves the bonds, and then it just is a self-fulfilling prophecy as everybody has to undo the leverage they have in their. Okay, so this is what goes on. So now, this is the big deal going forward. Now, let's tie this into Trump's offer that just hit the airwaves in his phone call with Putin last week, when Trump called Putin 2 weeks ago to congratulate him on his electoral success. Right? So Trump called Putin against the wishes of everybody in the U.S. government to say, hey, you did good. Congratulations. It's a huge win. Fantastic. Big. Huge. We should get together and meet. Kremlin just put out a statement about this. Rumors that coming out of the White House that this was the case. Said last week, widely distributed article, U.S. only negotiates when they're losing. Go on. Syria. Trump's talking seriously about Syria, pulling out. Everybody in the foreign policy establishment is angry with him. Big deal. Big, huge. This is all big. It's important to see the connection here. Trump wants to meet with Putin about strategic arms control, and obviously all these other things, Korea, the changing of the guard in terms of oil pricing, all of this stuff is all very important, all incredibly important. Why Trump is getting out of the way as repealing all the Obama level rules on oil production in the United States. He wants to be the marginal supplier. He wants to be the supplier of the marginal barrel of oil, not the Russians. He understands the value of that. He understands that gives you leverage. It gives you power within the marketplace, power politically. It's not dumb. Anybody who says that Donald Trump is dumb is, well, not worth listening to. Okay? So this is why they're going to talk. So many other reasons that they're. But the Skripal poisoning was set up, I'm sure, an MI6 operation to derail that process. Derail us pulling out of Syria, Trump being able to tell his foreign policy guys, we're getting out of Syria. Change the dynamic and try and isolate Russia. Moreover, again, as I said last week about the Nord Stream pipeline, also a way to remove the Russian businesses from being able to do business within the European Union via the City of London, and the Russians to be able to sell debt in the European markets and everything else in order to finish the Nord Stream pipeline, Nord Stream 2 pipeline. So, but it goes, I think, even deeper than that. Because remember back to last year, Putin ordered a review of the port situation in Russia. Wants the dollar removed from Russian trade. Russian ports, because a lot of them are in debt up to their eyeballs in all the expansion of Russian ports. Apparently, most Russian ports are less than 15 years old. They were all built in the Putin regime, and they were all built with cheap dollars. And that's where the last vestige of a lot of Russian corporate, U.S.-denominated corporate debt is. Port system. And so when the ruble exploded, the port fees in Russia exploded because the port operators still wanted to be paid their tariffs in dollars in order to pay back their loans. Problem? Putin says, no, none of that. That was in September. They fought it. They complained about it. The Federal Anti-Monopoly Service in Russia went after the port operators, the major port operators. The courts overturned the fines that they were levied, but the whole point was to put political pressure on them to change the way they're doing their stevedoring tariff structure, which put them back into rubles. that creates a huge demand for rubles in the open marketplace, right? It moves the dollar from it pisses off the city of London, it pisses off the city of New York, it pisses off everybody. Now you have to buy Russian oil and Russian gas and Russian goods. You got to pay your tariff fees in rubles. You got to pay for that stuff in rubles. No more backdooring dollars into the Russian economy in order to be able to manipulate the exchange rate by the financial system. No way. All done. Interestingly enough, the leading port operator in Russia in 2017 paid off like 30% of its debt or 25% of its debt. It was in debt upwards of $1 billion. And now it's only in debt down. Now its net debt at the end of this year is only like $713 million. And all of this debt's not due until 2022. So I think the Russian government paid off some of those dollar-denominated debts, converted them into ruble-denominated debts. The new rules went into place in December saying, yes, they're actually going to, over a period of time, convert all the Russian port tariffs to rubles. But they had to. But the other side of that coin is that some of the U.S. dollar-denominated debt had to be. Fair enough. Now, Putin's been trying to get the oligarchs to repatriate all their cash and bring that money back to Russia to invest in Russia for years. The United States and the Brits are handing him all the ammunition he needs to repatriate all that debt, or all that capital, and pay off all the debts that are denominated in dollars, thereby removing any leverage that the United States has in a hybrid war sense against the Russian economy. I think that's pretty funny, if you want my honest opinion. And oh, by the way, LIBOR rates continue to rise. Dollar liquidity behind the scenes continues to we'll see what happens as we come into the new quarter. Now that we're into the new quarter and the banks are done squaring up their books and prettying them up and putting lipstick on their pig balance sheets, we'll see if this continues. It does, right? We still see rising LIBOR rates after the first say week of April, say this week. This is serious. And that to me says that Russia's winning the war of attrition against the United States. Over time, Putin has won the war of attrition geopolitically. That's all he's been playing for. He hasn't been playing to win. He's been trying to play in order to get the United States to back down. Trump is willing to talk over both North Korea and the strategic arms and trade and marginal barrels of oil and the Petroyuan and all this stuff. It's going to be a really interesting next few weeks. Really interesting. The last thing I want to point out, I know you guys I've heard me talk about this before. After March 1st, the Russian State of the Union address where Putin unveiled all these new weapon systems was a turning point. I think the turning point, now the more that I think about it, the turning point I think happened earlier than that even. Remember in late February, there was a report of 200 Russian mercs getting wiped out near Deir ez-Zor? Remember that? Remember how the United States, the military, had a free hand in Syria and wiped out, with extreme prejudice, wiped out over 200 Russian mercs who wandered too close to the oil fields east of the Euphrates River near Deir ez-Zor in Syria. Jackasses like Thomas Wichter, who I fucking hate, by the way. Such a freaking... because he doesn't understand anything. Well, he understands some things, but he doesn't get it. Out there saying, if anybody thinks that the Russians have military superiority over the United States, here, take a look at this. Yeah, dude. Everybody was operating under a specific set of rules about non-engagement. And we obviously broke those rules. Yeah, it's something like we killed 200 and wounded a lot more. You're absolutely right, user 13. And going on and on about how everybody was going on and on and on about how U.S. military superiority, the Russians are the Russians don't have anything, blah, 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 blah. Okay, fine. Obviously, at that moment in time, CENTCOM, U.S. CENTCOM, and Russian command were discussing everything. They were trying to stay out of their way, each other's way in every way. And then what happened? This happened. This was obviously a provocation meant to try and start a war. And it was probably at that moment that Putin won, and Trump too said, all right, enough is enough. That's it. Because Trump went to CPAC and said, once we're done getting rid of ISIS, leaving Syria, it's somebody else's job. Said this is CPAC. 93% approval rating at the CPAC straw poll. Bill Kristol crying in his fucking latte, the whole 9 yards. Right? March 1st, Putin comes out and says, look, this is what we have. All you armchair quarterbacks, all you armchair historians, all you armchair military advisors, all you laptop bombardiers, blow me. You think you understand what I'm saying? You kill 700 of our guys, or you kill 200 of our guys and wound another 500 for an oil field in eastern Syria, which you're occupying illegally, after we've gone out of our way to stay out of your way and try and resolve this diplomatically. You stab us in the back like that, this is what we have. And all of your military guys know this. And I'm sure Trump was pissed off about this. I'm sure that's why McMaster was fired. And I'm sure that's why he's telling John Kelly, draw up plans to remove us from Syria. Kelly's pissing and bitching and moaning. They're all pissing, bitching, and moaning. And it's exactly for this reason. It started with that attack. Putin responded. The world has gone nuts. The neocons are freaking out because they're about to lose everything. Because public opinion's not on their side here. No one wants World War III with the Russians. And yet, that's what then we get MI6 staging a crude false flag. What are you people telling me? I mean, you really think this is what's going on? Pretty obvious what's happening. The Chinese are going to go back and forth with tit for tat trade tariffs. That's all bullshit. The Chinese, I mean, Trump is complaining about this stuff. The Chinese yuan has appreciated versus the dollar more than 10% over the last year, and the Chinese aren't complaining about it. So I don't know what everybody's talking about. The yuan is probably going to go to 6.3. Right, and now another comment from user 13 that all of this makes sense, that we need to get the hell out of Afghanistan. Let the Taliban wipe out the poppy field. Remember, Trump is also talking to the Taliban now about various sections of the Taliban, because the Taliban is not a monolithic group. There are aspects of the Taliban, there are groups within them that want to do for peace, that want to work with Kabul. There are others that don't. Yada yada. It's all a mess. But at the end of the day, the Taliban does not want the respected Taliban leaders in Afghanistan do not want the ones working with the CIA do. They're the ones that need to be wiped out. So it's all tying together. Then Trump keeps going tripling and doubling down on stopping the opioid traffic and the illegal immigration and all of it. He's on the warpath. Just wish he had not signed the omnibus spending bill. But again, you're winning on, if you get 9 wins and you get 1 big loss, well, this one's a big one. Big one. We'll see what happens. He needs to be able to walk away from here looking like he got the upper hand. Putin's very generous. Putin's very pragmatic. He'll give Trump the win he needs domestically in order to go back to the United States and dismantle all this nonsense. Problem is whether or not Putin actually believes that Trump is capable of pulling it off. That's what's going to color all of these talks. That's what's the worry. Everybody's mind. Real question is whether or not, there's an article up on Russia Insider this morning talking about this very issue. Is about, look, they expelled 60 of our diplomats. How can I trust you? You went along to get along. How can I trust you that you're not going to make things worse? Part of the crazy Ivan thing. We're uprooting people's lives. Then again, may just be necessary. Who knows? The diplomats that are getting that got expelled may be people that Putin wanted expelled. Well, he shuts down the St. Petersburg consulate, which is full of U.S. NGOs. And it's very possible that this is all of this diplomat exchange stuff is all just getting rid of the foreign policy. Is this another way of getting rid of the Obama holdovers and Soros monkeys? And I'm just popping that out of my head, so I don't know if it's real or not. I'm just throwing it. Right. If so, user 13's comment is, if Trump can't stop the caravan from Mexico, why would Putin think he can do anything else? It's really important. All right, guys, we're up over our 30-minute limit. Tomorrow morning, I've got an interview with Radio Sputnik out of Moscow. Got called from a producer this morning. Very cool. We're going to do a Skype interview at 9 o'clock. When there's a link, I'll blog. Looking forward to that. Been looking forward to wondering when I was going to get a call from Sputnik RT or somebody at some point. We're going to talk to Petroyuan. So it should be fun. I'm going to go over a lot of these talking points I just did today. This is in some ways a dry run for that interview tomorrow morning. All right. So again, if you like what you hear, you can sign up over at the Gold Goats and Guns over on Patreon to get the investment newsletter and the private blog. I have a post up this morning, actually, on the private blog. Subscribers talking about general investment strategies. So there we are. You guys take care. You have a great afternoon. I'll be on Periscope tonight at 8 o'clock. Keep your stick on the ice.